Well, hello there. You're watching OffBeat Business TV or listening to the OBBM network. My name is Susan Hamilton, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm going to be talking with Jennifer Ekwonye, and a fine young woman that is heading up Young Americans for Liberty. And so stay tuned. You're going to learn more about this.
Welcome to OffBeat Business TV and the OBBM Network podcast. CEO and host Susan Hamilton shares vital insight from local DFW leaders on successful life and business, focused squarely on local family business. It's time for our nation to rise, and we'll do it through a vibrant local business sector that stands up for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Ready to meet your advocates? Here's your host.
Friends, have I got a treat for you. Have you been wondering whether or not the next generation has any idea what it means to live in a free nation or what liberty is? I talk to people all day long that have that legitimate concern. Meet Jennifer Ekwonye with Young Americans for Liberty. Hi. And this is her first television interview, and I told her, you're doing what you do, you've chosen a role, you will be on television much, so we're going to try and make her as comfortable as possible in this position, because you are doing some really interesting work, Jennifer.
Thank you. Yeah. So essentially what I've been doing is I've been building chapters in the North Texas area for Young Americans for Liberty, and I essentially do that by holding activism events, and that's how I identify students who are open to the ideas of liberty.
That's a strange thing to say, that
really?
Are open to the ideas of liberty. So tell me what your experience is in that when you're talking to people that are, and you're looking for people specifically that are open to the ideas of liberty.
Yeah.
What does that look like? I mean, what's the feel out there? What's the temperature?
At least at UT Arlington, surprisingly, talking about the Second Amendment did not get me in hot water. So,
oh yeah,
yeah. But yeah, the temperature there is like pretty fine, I guess. Like I didn't get into hot water or anything.
So in other words, you're not getting.
I'm not getting kicked off.
You're not getting problems. You're not getting pushback from the student.
The administration. No,
okay.
I didn't even ask to set up my table.
Well, that's
I just
best.
Did it.
That's
anyway.
best. No doubt. But what's the vibe from the students?
The vibe from the student is like essentially, it's usually friendly because I usually just ask a question where they can say yes or no, like, do you love the Second Amendment? And they can say yes or no. If they say yes, that's how I know, okay, they're open to liberty. And I explain to them what Young Americans for Liberty is, and then they sign up.
Now, I think it's interesting that you're going after the Second Amendment first instead of the First Amendment.
The Second Amendment protects the First. So.
That's funny.
So, yeah.
That's funny. Do you notice whether or not people understand what the amendments are?
Some people don't. Actually, I've come across some people, like some immigrants, who don't know what the Second Amendment is or have never read the Constitution before. So I explained it to them to what it was, and some of them were like, "Oh, I really like this. My country didn't have that." So, yeah.
So that's empowering when you can give somebody, hey, this is one of the perks of being an American, right?
Yes.
that's one of the perks. You do the sales spiel on that. But it is interesting when you're looking at people your age in the school. So typically for our audience, we know who you are, local business. We are focused on that 90% of American micro to small business that tend to be family-owned businesses of 9 employees or less. And that means we're building our business while we're raising our kids, taking care of our parents. We probably have an EMT, law enforcement, active duty, military, veteran in our family or workplace. And about 30 to 50% of us have an addict in our family or workspace in Dallas County. That's really something, right? So when you're looking at all the different things that make up this community, I'm talking to adults that have been in business for a while, that have 15, 20 years, and that have really, their big challenge has been employment, is keeping their staff in great mental health. You know, some of those pieces are falling around the generation and around the age bracket that you're dealing with. And we wonder if the community really understands, if our young people really understand what it means to be an American. And you're sounding like some of them even know the Constitution?
Yeah, some of them do. But some of them are just like, okay, Second Amendment, is it about free speech or is it about guns?
Right.
Yeah.
So you want
Which
to know.
amendment's that?
And that's nothing to be ashamed of, because
But, yeah.
that's what I'm finding in the business community. I ask those questions to grown adults who've grown up in America, and a lot of them are not sure what those things even mean. And I consider myself somewhat literate in constitutional liberties, but I didn't understand a lot of it until we started teaching this class. So every Monday night we teach free for local business owners the local business learn the Constitution classes, so that we can start going over it and understanding what this language meant, understand the context. And wow, there's a whole lot in there. And you're going out there on the campuses and saying, hey, how do you feel about this, with no preemption, right? I mean, you're not saying hi. Seriously, how are you just approaching this? Just walking up to strangers and saying, how do you feel about this particular amendment? And they're responding to you. What's the percentage of feedback do you feel is knowledgeable?
Knowledgeable. The feedback that I usually receive whenever like I go up to people and say, hey, do you support the Second Amendment? Most of them are trying to get to class.
Yeah. So just getting an answer can be difficult.
Yeah, most of them are trying to get to class, but that's usually why I jump in front of them. So,
oh, you are an activist.
Yeah, I go out there and like block their way and get them to pay attention to me. But yeah, usually most of the time, like if they say no, I don't support the Second Amendment, I would say like, okay, cool, go about your day. That's fine. you can not support the Second Amendment. And
that's interesting. That's interesting that you're using that approach. I really use that approach myself. I feel like right now we're at a stage of our life where, in our business and our communities, where we have to really go after people that understand this and work on that group first, cultivate a community there first, so that we have a better chance of impacting the larger community. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously the ones that do say yes, like I introduce them like to me and then introduce them to the organization. And yeah, like as far as feedback, most of the time it's people saying like, oh, I don't have time, I don't have this, but I have to overcome those objections.
So when you get them together, what does a chapter look like for Young Americans for Liberty?
The chapter is essentially like we would have bi-weekly meetings discussing current events or events that Young Americans for Liberty, like the national organization, is planning on doing, or any projects or opportunities where we can go out there and do activism or volunteer, whether it's phone banking or knocking doors for political candidates. Yeah, that's the main purpose of the chapter, is to have a space where the members can be active, have something to do to make Liberty win.
Okay, so what type of resource materials do you offer?
Resource materials, like we usually offer our members, our dues-paying members, like different kinds of books. I know that one of the books that we usually give around is I Pencil. Forget who's that by. And then there's the graphic novel version of Anthem by Ayn Rand.
Okay.
We give those out. We also give out a lot of at our activism events, we also give out a lot of stickers. A lot of people my age like to put them on our laptop or put them on our water bottle, so that way we can sport it around and be like, hey, look at me. I look at my laptop or my water bottle and it has all these stickers on it. And it's also a good conversation starter. So, yeah.
So that's interesting. You're not handing out constitutions.
I do hand out constitutions.
Okay.
I do hand out constitutions. So, yes. That and a whole bunch of other, swag.
So do you go over the Constitution when you get together?
Not necessarily, but like when people ask about, like, when we talk about certain like current events that relate to the Constitution, then obviously we're going to go like
so
discuss that.
Great. So you've got a reference. So you can go, okay, this is the current event, this is the situation, and now here's the reference that this is what, so we're going to marry these and go, okay, what's right or what's wrong with this? And then how do we stand? Because one thing that's really interesting about it, in my opinion, is that you can have, if you agree or disagree or on any topic, you can talk about it.
Right.
That's the way liberty works.
Exactly.
It's very different from the way socialism works and the way that the things that are currently a lot of cultural Marxism and a lot of cancel culture going on, where we're not supposed to be talking and we're not supposed to be sharing ideas. Well, how on earth do you come to a reasonable conclusion when you've got limitations like that?
How do you come up with solutions if you don't have any different perspectives?
So how do you feel about when we're looking at diversity on the campus? You're probably plugged right into that conversation.
Yeah. So I am a very, like, as far as diversity goes, I support diversity. I support diversity of color, diversity of thought as well. That's so important. But my university, and I go to the University of North Texas. My university is really amped up about diversity of gender, diversity of color. That's great. That's awesome. But like, they don't really do much about as far as diversifying thought. The school is pretty liberal, so
you've got some interesting challenges there. Friends, are you finding this fascinating? I certainly am. Hey, we're going to go listen to a few of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to hear more from Jennifer Ekwonye.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? Or spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years? Even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year. Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
Business runs on technology, and human beings are creatures of habit. Unfortunately, not all our habits are good. Technology, when it works, is supposed to make our lives easier, creating routines that allow us to protect customer data, track our progress, forecast the future, communicate better, and move much faster. So, you need technology solutions that work when you're not working, or simply not paying attention. Smart technology solutions, making the complicated uncomplicated.
My American dream is to help you stay healthy and energized so you can live your American dream.
Our American dream is equipping future generations of American dreamers.
My American dream is to protect my community so they can live their American dream.
My American dream is to bring you some spice and flavor to your life.
Our American dream is ensuring what's most valuable to you.
Our American dream is creating opportunities for healthcare providers so they can have their American dreams.
My American dream is serving our business community and advocating for all of your American dreams.
And we're back. My name is Susan Hamilton, and you're watching OffBeat Business TV or listening to the OBBM network. I'm here with my lovely guest, Jennifer Ekwonye, with Young Americans for Liberty. And you had some really encouraging information that you shared with us during the break. As far as the chapters that you have, you're not just at one school. So you've really done some serious groundwork to develop chapters in various schools. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have chapters in the North Texas area, University of North Texas, UT Arlington, Southern Methodist University. Those are the top 3 schools that like I usually frequent. There's other schools that I also want to like create chapters there as well, like Collin College, Tarrant County College as well, Midwestern State. I'm also trying to build a chapter at Tarleton State as well. So.
You are hugely busy. I cannot imagine how much time it takes to do that and do the groundwork there. I mean, surely you need help. You need more hands on deck to actually reach out into these communities in a larger way. What could you use? What kind of help and support could you use?
I could really use some more recruitment directors. Recruitment directors are essentially in charge of recruiting members for chapters, or whether like their respective chapter or a chapter for some other school or something. Just essentially helping me with that, because like recruiting is a lot of work.
Yeah, but I imagine there's a lot of administration involved as well. If you're putting together these opportunities twice a week to get together, that's lofty.
Yeah, not twice a week, but like every 2 weeks. But
bi-weekly. Okay,
but yeah, essentially, like I'm trying to schedule activism events, making sure that there's like these chapters are staying active and all that. So yeah.
Now you mentioned activism events. I think that's an important word that we should really explore there for a minute, because you're not talking about some of the activism we typically see covered on the news media. Tell us about the activism with Young Americans for Liberty.
The campus activism, we usually like to focus on one issue for one specific activism event. Like we have different types of events we usually do, like according to our kits that we have. We have a free speech ball where college students can write on a beach ball, like this really big beach ball. They can write whatever they want because it's the First Amendment. So, yeah.
Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, sometimes they draw too. So, yeah, freedom of expression. And then there's also Defend the Second, like I had talked about earlier. There's also Bring the Troops Home. And then Real Justice, Real Reform, that focuses on criminal justice reform, which I'm really passionate about as well.
Oh, me too.
So, yeah, those are the ones that I can think of on top of my head. But those activism events, we like to focus on one issue and then use that one issue to identify people who like it or want to learn more about it.
So I should have asked you that first, because that's probably why your approach is the way it is, right? When you're walking up to people and you're saying, hey, how do you feel about this? It's because you're promoting a particular event that's going to deal with that issue.
Yeah.
So that works really well. So yeah, you're getting some feedback from the community. And has anybody ever come back to you later and said, wow, I'm really glad I'm a part of this? I mean, what are you hearing from what kind of positive feedback are you getting?
Yeah, the positive feedback that I'm getting, like even like one of the people I know, I don't know if I'm probably just gonna go ahead and say his name. He's a really big activist in Frisco, Patrick Wamhoff. Yeah, he really loves our organization, and especially like the work that I'm doing. Like I was able to organize some members to go pass out flyers for this. We were trying to pressure one of the representatives on this gun rights bill, like constitutional carry bill.
Right.
So,
and it's still got a little bit of work to go.
Yes. Yeah. The one that we were pushing for got killed, but there's a different constitutional carry bill right now. But yeah, essentially, like I was able to organize that, and he mentioned that, like, you know, the things that I've been doing and motivating people my age to go out and do them, he wishes that, you know, there would be more of these things like that if there were more young people going out and fighting for what they believe in.
Well, that's why I've got you here today.
Yeah.
I've got you here today because you're a young lady setting an example, and I think that's really, really important to be able to do. It's not okay to say, I support the First Amendment quietly.
Yeah. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It's the First Amendment.
Yeah.
It's speech. You speak your mind.
Well, it's not just speak your mind, though, is it? I mean, it's freedom of the press, and it's making sure that we're not squelching information and we're not hiding information. I mean, and think about all the ways it's suppressed, and it has been for quite some time. I remember when my kids were in elementary school, and you know they're 35 now, and my youngest is 27. But back in those days, they were just starting to take Mark Twain out of the schools, labeling that entire thing as a racist book. Well, that's interesting because without that kind of storytelling, we don't even understand what the races went through as a young nation.
And you wouldn't understand what racism is,
Truly.
what it looks like. Exactly.
Yeah, so we've got to, if we hide all those things and whitewash everything, then we really don't understand the journey at all. And then you wonder, okay, what on earth is this really all about? Because we're missing really huge pieces, and it has a lot to do with liberty. It has a lot to do with everything that you're doing today. So is all of your work on college campuses?
For the most part, yeah. Like I help sometimes with with our special program. Young Americans for Liberty has a special program called Operation Win at the Door.
Okay.
When it's usually election season, I'm usually also helping with recruiting young people to go knock doors for pro-liberty state legislatures. And essentially, once those state legislators get elected, they get into our Hazlitt Coalition, and that way we can keep them accountable as far as pro-liberty legislation comes around.
Well, that leads me to my next question, because you've been using that word liberty. And I love that word because it's such a smart word. And it's a bipartisan word. It's a word that really encompasses what are we really talking about, because all the other nuances can just get turned and twisted depending on a point of view. But who can argue down liberty?
Argue down liberty?
I mean, it's a pretty good stand.
It's a pretty good stand. Like, if you were against liberty.
Really?
Like,
how do you express that exactly?
Exactly. You know? How do you express that? How can one be against liberty? I don't understand that.
It is, but we give them away. We give our liberties away all the time. And, you know, it's been said that it's not that anybody takes them from you, it's that you give them away. Apathy is huge. Yeah. And a lot of times what we see in the marketplace is we want to be able to inspire our workforce. We want to be able to inspire our front lines and inspire our families. And so do you have any advice for our market that might help us be more inspiring, a little less, you know, we don't want to come across in a way that turns off the liberty discussion. That's really the right discussion to have.
Yeah. I guess as far as my advice, I think it's really important to talk about things that are really important right now. Like, for example, the pandemic. The pandemic is almost over. But yeah, that's a really good issue, because things like mask mandates and all these regulations as far as conducting your business during the COVID-19 pandemic, it's very stifling. And as well as like the quote unquote stimulus package, going to big businesses and not even helping the little guys. So yeah, talking about things that are like really pertinent and really important to the average Joe, that's the best way to message the liberty.
Just keep it topical. Keep it what's going on in our current events, and talk about that, and try to have those open conversations. Because it's one thing to, you know, even like you mentioned, the stimulus. Liberty when you understand that concept, you realize that nobody hands you free money.
Yeah, no
that
one
doesn't
does.
happen. So if you're receiving free money, what does that really mean?
The best stimulus is to
Right.
open businesses. So you don't need to give. You don't need to print more money.
That's a brilliant thing. And then I'll tell you what, we're going to come back. We're going to listen to a few of our sponsors, and we're going to come back on that note because you just nailed it right there. And you know she did, didn't you? Hey, we're going to hear from a few of our sponsors. We'll be right back.
The OBBM network acknowledges that this is a pivotal time in history, and it is clear the United States of America has been undermined by many of our elected officials for some time now. We want our local business audience to stand strong in the face of what we now understand, and to be empowered to grow our businesses on the local level beyond the limitations that have been imposed upon us. We believe it is in our national interest to inspire our communities through strong economic development, and additionally to hold our elected officials accountable for accurate representation of we the people. For that reason, we encourage you to go to WeStandForFreedom.com to learn about the National Write Your Congressman organization that has been the trusted communication tool for local communities for over 60 years. Learn how your representatives are voting. Understand the laws and regulations under consideration on the state and federal level before they are enacted at the county and city levels. Communicate directly with these officials and stand up for yourself, for by doing so, you will protect the communities you serve from tyrannical rule and unconstitutional reforms. The OBBM network is the premier voice for local business, and we take that responsibility seriously. The OBBM network has everything you need to grow and transition your business for success on popular syndicated podcast networks, Roku and other video channels, and the OBBM network app. We work for you, local business, and we've got your back.
And we're back. My name is Susan Hamilton, and I am here with the lovely Jennifer Ekwonye, and she's talking about Young Americans for Liberty right here in DFW. If your kids are going to college, you probably need to hook up with her. So she's got these chapters called Young Americans for Liberty, and where they don't exist, they need to, because you are going around talking to people about, hey, liberty. And before we went to break, you made this really dear to my heart statement. You said that the smartest thing we could do to...
Like the best stimulus is to open businesses.
Yeah, it really is. Now, how did you come to that conclusion at your age? I imagine you're not a business owner.
My mom is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, living with my mom and noticing how hard she works with her business. She has a home health care agency, and like the thing is that like the pandemic like really burdened her business, and like now, like right now, like she's having to work a nursing contract somewhere else out of town just to make ends meet and, you know, make sure the lights are on and all that. So
that's a challenge, yeah. A lot of local businesses did struggle, and a lot did really well. So this is it's just been a huge transition no matter what, and we're all going to feel the brunt of the stimulus checks that went out and the payroll protection, the PPP, if they end up having to pay that back, and the employment part where we couldn't get our supply chains and our workforce to show up because they were getting paid more to stay home.
Exactly.
You know, so all of those challenges are going to come back. They're not going to just disappear. I think we've got a lot more to see with our economy. And it's important for the local business to get strong and get powerful, because what I heard in my community, so some of the local vendors that we use, my dry cleaners for instance, he says he's just tired. He's been in business for over 30 years. All the kids from the high school work at his place of business, and everybody knows him. He's a great guy to do business with. He's convenient. Everything about his business is convenient. But asking him, hey, how did you fare? And he says, yeah, not great. It's been bad. I said, where's your team? Where's the clothes? He says, you know, this was too hard. And I said, well, it's turning around right now. What can I do to help? Is there something we can do for your business and turn it around? He goes, it wouldn't matter, because now I'm tired. And we have to realize that's a very real feeling out there for the people that have tried really hard to employ and keep people in and keep their business open, when so many people kept their dollars home because they weren't going to play this game. And that really hurt the economy very, very much. So I applaud your mom for doing what she can do to keep her head above water and look forward to her coming back out in a powerful way because of everything you're doing. That's what we have to do. We've got to see, for us, we've got to inspire the next generation.
Yeah.
Right? That's huge. What kind of inspiration do you need, dear?
Wait, inspiration like
inspiration. What do you need? What keeps you going? Because this has got to be exhausting.
Oh yeah, it can be exhausting. Sometimes I work too much. So yeah, sometimes I work too much because I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. But what really drives me as far as activism is making sure the person that feels like they can't be heard can be heard. That's really important for me. I like, there's this Bible verse, Proverbs 30, 8-9. It says something about speaking up for the voiceless and helping out the needy. So that's what drives me. God is what drives me to advocate for others.
Well, that's impressive. It drives me as well. And I think that's something cool we can say on the OBBM network, because nobody's going to tell me I'm not going to. I'm going to say, yeah, I know full well that Jesus moves the needle for me.
Yes.
It's the only thing that keeps me moving. A lot of times when there's not enough strength, that's what this community has to drive on, and that's awesome too, because that's a great power. It's not a small thing at all. It's not a small thing that you're doing. So you need boots on the ground. You need people to help you with these chapters. So let's help this lady out and get Jennifer some people. Make sure that you reach out to us so that you can, all the links and the way to reach Jennifer are going to be associated with this video and the podcast. But how can they get a hold of you? Go ahead and tell us on air.
So my email is jennifer.ekwonye@yaliberty.org. That's my work email. You can reach out to me, whatever is going on. If you live in North Texas and you know like a school that doesn't have a chapter there, feel free to email me. And I also wanted to talk about like our upcoming convention.
Yes,
this summer.
you've got a big deal coming up. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so our convention is called Revolution 2021. It's essentially going to be the rebirth of the Liberty Movement. A ton of young conservatives and young libertarians are going to be traveling to Orlando to listen to Liberty speakers like Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, even the legend Ron Paul.
That's funny.
Yeah, our organization used to be Students for Ron Paul. So.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, fun fact. And there's going to be a bunch of trainings there, and it's a whole bunch of networking opportunities as well. And essentially, our young students are going to be learning how to further the movement. So it's happening on August 5th through 7th. And the way you apply is go to yaliberty.org/revolution, and you can use me, Jennifer Ekwonye, as a referral.
Oh, that's excellent. So yeah, if you didn't catch that, if you're driving down the road, we've got all that information, including a link. So all you're going to have to do is hit the button and make sure that you reach out to Jennifer so that you can give her some support, send your kids that way. You know, it's a wonderful time to meet you and see all the wonderful things that are going on. It gives us hope. It gives us courage, because we wonder often how we can talk to the next generation about these things when we feel like we're really needled a lot of times with the national media. Makes us feel like maybe we can't have these conversations. Maybe there's just such a big wall, maybe we can't get through it. But I hear from you that yes, we can.
Yeah, it's really important to keep the hope up because, like, especially after the 2020 election, there's a lot of people around me started like seem like nihilistic and kind of like giving up. And like even like in the midst of that, I feel like it's really important for me to not lose hope for everyone else. So.
Oh, girl, you're speaking my language. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to keep our batteries charged, don't we?
Yeah.
We got a lot of people to encourage. We got a lot of business to do.
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Well, so once again, I'll give you all that information, and stay connected with the OBBM network. Hey, have you downloaded the OBBM network? Find us on Spotify, iHeart, YouTube, Gab, Cloud Hub. We're everywhere you have been and everywhere you're going. Susan Hamilton, Offbeat Business Media, and you've been watching Offbeat Business TV.